welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. Today we're joined by Róisín O'Bentley from Thrive Physio. Róisín, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Róisín the machine.
Yes,
Róisín the machine.
That's what I've discovered now. In terms of kicking us off, do you want to tell all the listeners, anyone who's watching, a little bit about yourself, how you got into doing what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a pelvic health or women's health specialist physiotherapist, and I've been a specialising in this area for the past 4 years now. I actually retrained to be a physio later in life. I was 30 when I retrained to be a physio. And my passion for getting into the women's health side, well, I suppose I've always had that slight interest in it, but never really knew very much about it. But after the birth of my second child, I was running for the train and I wet myself. And I don't mean like a couple of drops. I meant flooded down my trousers. And I was running with a friend, got on the train, had to go into the toilets in the train. I had nothing to change into, frantically washing them and then drying them under the dryer. And I just was mortified. And I just thought, how? I've been doing everything that I've been told to by the midwives, by my training of Kegels. Why hasn't it worked? Why did I completely flood? Why have I wet myself? And it was that moment of being mortified that kind of, I suppose, took me down a rabbit warren of pelvic health and wanting to know more about it. And because I was upset, I was unhappy, I suppose, by the lack of information out there, the lack of training for physios as well. So, what I mean, when I went to uni and retrained, do you want to guess how much time was spent on pelvic health?
At university.
Yeah, when I was training as a physio.
I'm going to say it's worryingly low. Maybe a couple months. So
I spent a whole term just on anatomy.
Right.
But on pelvic health, I had a 1 hour session.
Wow.
And what was worse was all the boys in the class just kind of went, oh, well, this doesn't affect me, so I don't care. And they literally switched off.
Wow.
And it was awful. I just, that really angered me. And it's just that, I suppose it's all those little seeds of my origin story that slowly came together to make me who I am today. So after going down this rabbit warren of pelvic health, I started working, I worked at a private physio company and set up their women's health department, and also worked in the NHS. So in Sheffield, I worked at the Jessop's Hospital, at the antenatal hospital, helping women with leaks, and antenatal and postnatal women as well. And after a year of doing that, I got really frustrated because all I was doing was telling them, do your Kegels. Oh, are you still leaking? Just do your Kegels more and you'll be okay. And I just got incredibly frustrated by wanting to give them more, but then having the time pressures and the patient pressures on me, I wasn't able to do that. So the passion to make this world a leak-free place and to teach people about their pelvic floors just led me to founding my company, Thrive. So I've been thriving. Excuse the pun. I've been thriving since 2023 and helping women, well, not helping them, empowering them. Because what I get really frustrated about is this... how leaks have been normalised. So if you two lovely gentlemen, but for women, if you're leaking, first of all, it's quite embarrassing. So you don't want to talk to anybody about it. When you do eventually go, I can't do this anymore, there's something wrong, and you go see your GP, or you talk to your friend, or even on media, you see Tenor Lady saying, oh, everybody has an oops moment. Or your friend going, oh, yeah, no, that happens to me too. Or the GP saying, oh, sorry, you've had a baby. Of course you're going to leak. Then all of a sudden you've just been told there's nothing you can do about it. You're disempowered when nothing could be further from the truth. So around depending on the studies, between 40 and 60% of women leak. Now, I think that number is a lot higher because a lot of women don't like to admit it. But
I was going to say, I thought it'd be a lot higher than 40 to 60%.
Yeah. But this is what the studies are showing at the moment. And like I say, I think it's a lot higher and a lot of people think the same. But let's go for this 40% number.
Yeah.
Do you know what also happens to 40% of women?
Okay.
They break a bone.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So 40% of women break a bone. That's not normal. But why are we saying that leaking is normal?
That's a really interesting comparison.
It's just changing a word. Words are so powerful. So it's not normal, but it is common. So something that's common is fixable. So you can do something about it. But if it's normal, then you're leaking. That's it to the end of your days.
Well, look, as people who train people, we coach people, we help them get better in every aspect, especially their health and fitness. We do know that like everything has a cure to a certain degree with the body. There's no muscle that can't be brought up or improved or just make someone's life better. And I think the pelvic floor is no different to that. And I know that you're going to preach, you're preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but I think that people need to know this and women need to be aware of this and how to actually do it, because I think it becomes a bit of avoidance after a while, where once you've accepted that this is something that I go through on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis, monthly basis, you then start avoiding the things that trigger it. And then your life becomes quite limited. So you're not running anymore, even though you used to, because you leak when you run. Then you realise that, okay, I'm not going to, do anything, exerts it. I might not, I'm trying to think of things that people would do where it's... Deadlift, lift weights, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all over social media now is powerlifters, which we were talking about beforehand, with these big gushes while they're deadlifting. And fair play to the women, because they never seem that bothered. When they're doing it and it's all happening and you can see it coming out, they just crack on with the lift. And a lot of the comments underneath, they're kind of very mixed and quite harsh, I would say. Some people are like, that's minging, which I guess to a certain degree you can't lie with that. But also there's a lot of good comments around, this isn't normal. And a lot of women saying, this isn't normal, you should be able to fix this. Now the weights they're lifting are phenomenally heavy, like some of these big powerlifters that you see on these videos. Weights that even me and Brad probably wouldn't even touch.
No chance. I can confirm, no chance.
But even at that level, there should be some sense of, right, this is something I want to limit and something I should be working on. And it, again, same way you're working your back and your posterior chain when you deadlift, what are you doing to limit your pelvic floor deterioration, I guess? Regression, should I say.
Well, it's not a deterioration or a regression. So no muscle is an island. All muscles work as part of a team. And if we go with that analogy, your muscle, the team of muscles is only ever as strong as its weakest link.
Yeah.
And when I say weakest link, I don't mean that that muscle is weak, that it might just be either struggling to do its job because another muscle is too dominant, or it might be doing its job too well, which is preventing other muscles from, which means that it can't do as much as it wants to. What I mean by that is, and oftentimes the pelvic floor is too tense, not weak. So if you go to the NHS, lovely NHS, but if you're told to do your Kegels, it's because your pelvic floor is weak. No. Are you sat there right now leaking? No. Can you walk upstairs without leaking? Yeah. That doesn't mean that it's weak. Oftentimes in today's society, it's tension that causes the leaks. So what do I mean by that? Really good example is if I ask you to make a fist. Okay, with that fist, can you pick up a phone and send me a text?
I can try. Just bash it.
Knuckles.
Your wrist, your hand's weak. No, it's not. It's doing something. It's busy. You could probably scratch your head with it. You could maybe 10 pages, even get dressed, but you can't pick up that phone. That doesn't mean your hand is weak. It's just struggling to do that because it's doing something else. So the same with the pelvic floor. It can be overly tense. It's still keeping all your organs in place. It's still helping you stand upright. It's still keeping you balanced. But as soon as there's a little bit of extra effort demanded, it's just struggling to keep that doorway to the bladder closed a little bit, and you might leak a little bit.
I've heard the pelvic floor described as the pelvic diaphragm. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, and the reason for that is it forms the bottom of like our core, the can, which is our core. So what I mean by that, so your diaphragm is the top, or your esophagus, depending on who you talk to, and that's more for heavy lifting. Rabbit hole for another day. But you got your diaphragm, so that's your breathing muscle placed underneath your ribs. Okay, and at the bottom of this can is your pelvic floor, and the sides of your can are your back muscles and your stomach muscles. When you breathe in, your diaphragm contracts and it draws air in. So it pulls down, a bit like a syringe drawing in fluid. So what happens to all your internal organs then? They have to go somewhere. They're being squashed down. So your pelvic floor relaxes and lengthens, as do your stomach muscles, as do a little bit your back muscles, to make way for this. For these organs moving. And then when you breathe out, your diaphragm relaxes, your core muscles and your pelvic floor naturally tense up to push everything back up in place. And that's happening every time you take a breath, thousands of times a day. So your pelvic floor is working fine. It's not weak. But if your pelvic floor is tense, that natural movement, so relaxation and then tensing, can become a little bit more shallow, which can lead to all sorts of issues. So, like, it might be a bit of a struggle to take a deep breath in. You might a tense pelvic floor can also lead to constipation. It can lead to back pain. It can lead to reduced balance. And it can lead to leaks, just to name a few. But I don't want this to be a doom and gloom thing, because the pelvic floor is an amazing muscle. And like you said, it's a muscle. All muscles can change. You can influence every single muscle. And the pelvic floor is no different. My one beef, I suppose, with Kegels is that the pelvic floor isn't an island. It doesn't work by itself. So why do we strengthen it by itself? If you were to strengthen your bicep, you wouldn't just do a load of bicep curls, would you? How would you strengthen that? By doing all sorts of different movements overhead, get your pecs involved, do lats. Because you're a three-dimensional creature. We move in 3 dimensions. So does the pelvic floor. Excuse me.
I love the fact, I think it's a great insight, the fact that it's not weak, it's actually just tense, because we can relate to that in terms of some exercises and kind of clients that we deal with, where they might come to us, they've got a really weak lower back, and then we start poking around, assessing things, and we realise the hamstrings are massively tight. And now it's not the lower back. Well, the lower back probably is quite tight as well, as a result of taking too much of the stress and weight on a daily basis, because the hamstrings aren't firing. But that whole posterior chain is just tight. Nothing's really that kind of loose. And as soon as we start stretching more and the hamstrings get looser, the lower back gets less tense. Everything now starts to become better, more efficient, stronger as a unit. So that makes total sense to me. And it's a really good insight. I've never heard it put like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they call it the kinetic chain, where in terms of if something doesn't flow very well, it can have issues up and down that stream. I'm training someone at the moment who's just done bodybuilding style training, and trying to actually get them to move with quality and move in a different way where it's not just isolation is really fascinating, because they're noticing little pulls and niggles and they're like, this is horrible. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it will. I can imagine the pelvic floors and pelvic health is exactly the same. But
yeah, well, if you've always been told that the only way to strengthen your bicep is to do bicep curls, like your client, and then all of a sudden you kind of go, actually, no, you can do all sorts, and I'm like, whoa, oh, but I really struggle with that. You know, it's the same with the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor has lots of different jobs. It keeps our internal organs in place. It helps with breathing. It helps keep us upright. It's a postural muscle. It's a shock absorber as well. It keeps us balanced. And yet its most famous job is to be the gatekeeper to the bladder and bowel. And that's all we ever seem to focus on. And actually, if you've got really bad balance or really stiff hips, which is then causing, going back to your example, your client, back pain, and yet then your hamstrings are all tight as well. What links the two? the pelvic floor is in between there as well. So I'm not saying it's always a tension problem, but in my clinic, 9 times out of 10 it is. So if you're tense, getting you to squeeze is not going to do a jot of difference.
So how do you go about loosening the pelvic floor if someone's got a tense pelvic floor? What would be the first things? Because Kegels, I guess, are tightening, tensing exercise. Is that kind of sometimes putting more fuel on the fire?
Yeah, because so let's go back to that fist, okay? So yeah, we want to really strengthen this grip that we've got now. How are we going to do that? Oh, let's squeeze. Where's it going? Where is it going? Other than getting tighter and more sore. So it's to have a good strength, your muscles need to be able to go through.
I could have been doing that all day.
But to have a good strength, your muscles need to go through their full range of motion. So I always like saying the bicep because it's you can see really well. To get full strength in your bicep, you need to be able to completely straighten your arm and then completely bend it and touch your shoulder. That's where you get all that strength from that full movement. So with the pelvic floor, it's no different. First, there's loads of just general things you can do. So women often, and this is a societal thing, but we're often told, can't have a belly on show, suck that stomach in. That stomach is now tense. So all that movement of your internal organs is now putting more pressure on that pelvic floor, so it's also tense. But also the stomach muscles are best friends with the pelvic floor. So if you've got a tense stomach, you've got a tense pelvic floor. So anyway, so we're holding our stomachs in all of a sudden. We're told that it's unladylike to have your legs open. So let's cross our legs. So your inner thigh muscles, your adductors, they fizzle into the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor helps those adductors work. So you've got your crossed legs, you've got a stomach now that's tense as well. So all those muscles down there are tense. On top of that, good posture. So you're rigid. So your back is engaged now. All those muscles are all really tense. And I don't know, stress from the day might mean that you're mouth breathing or shallow breathing. So your diaphragm is only moving a little bit, like fluttering almost. So your pelvic floor is fluttering too. So it's tense. Everything is tense. Really, do you want to know an easy way to figure out if you've got a tense pelvic floor?
Is this going to involve any passing wind? Just that would be the biggest concern.
Do I have to get on all fours?
Let's go for it.
Your jaw.
My jaw.
If you've got a tense jaw, if you find that you're grinding your teeth or pursing your lips, oftentimes it means you've got a tense pelvic floor.
Okay.
And that's just how all the fascia and everything is all connected.
Wow.
I must be the most chilled person in the world. So I feel like sometimes people speak and I'm like, my jaw just hangs open.
I'm a big grinder, especially in my sleep or under the eyes.
I'm cooking that up, mate.
Big on grinder.
Big on grinder.
This is a balance show, gentlemen.
90% of the time.
So, sorry, going back to your point, so I was just explaining how it might all be tense. So, what can you do? What can women do? So, at the end of the day, you sitting back, letting your legs open up. Imagining your man spreading, basically. If you're in an airplane and there's a man in the middle seat, I can guarantee all women say this. Men just open up their legs, take up all the room, and we're tiny on the side. So just imagine you're in that middle seat. Spread out. Slow down your breathing. Breathing in and out through your nose can just really help soften everything. But for actual stretches of the pelvic floor, child pose is wonderful, as is happy baby pose. So if you're going to the gym and doing all these workouts, cool down your pelvic floor as well. So when you're stretching out at the end, stretch out your hamstrings, your quads, your back. Go to child pose. Let your stomach hang low. Soften your stomach. Can really help as well.
I cannot stress enough, if you are just listening to this, like, please try and go onto YouTube and watch it, because Róisín's like the way that you're using your hands, and you've explained like the core with the can and child pose and everything. Like, I can't stress that enough, because I think that's part of how powerful this message is going to be, to sort of see the visuals behind it as well, and if nothing, for the amazing necklace you're wearing as well.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed it.
I feel like I need to ask questions about this. Is that very much an empowering thing as well?
What do you think it is? I almost went. I have 2 necklaces that I like to wear. This one is a not a regular choice. Oh, what's the name of it? Tatty Divine necklace. It was gifted to me. I think a lot of my friends gift me things like this now, but it's a vulva, a bejeweled vulva.
A bejeweled vulva.
A bejeweled vulva. I also have another one. Do you remember when we were at school? And I can't remember the equation that you used to do, but it would always end up with boobies if you turned the calculator upside down. I've got that too, a boobies necklace.
Oh, nice.
I love that.
I generally wear that when I like to do talks all around Sheffield. And online and the world, I suppose, about pelvic health and actually how there's so much more to it. One of my favourite talks to do is called Bits and Boobies. And it's all about how your breasts impact your pelvic floor. And that's when I often wear that necklace.
How do your boobies impact your pelvic floor?
Bits and Boobies.
How do the bits and boobies interact?
So, well, actually, let's start with a question.
Don't know where this is going to go. Right.
Well, the average breast, how much do you think it weighs?
Weighs? Right. Let's think of this really scientifically above nothing else.
I feel like this might be unfair.
Just pop a number out. I think if I had to guess, I'd probably say 2 kilos a piece.
I was going to say 3.
Oh wow, you guys go much higher. Most women say about 500 grams.
Really?
But men are
We do.
More generous.
I'm not saying we feel it. We're better with weights, I guess, like because we're trainers. We kind of we can have a weight in one hand and a boob in another.
I was going to say, what are you doing with your client?
I love how Ryan's justified this in terms of we're always picking weights in. Yeah, if I can figure this out.
Might get me cancelled.
You're closer up, 1.15 kilos per boob. So about 2.5 pounds in old money.
Okay.
That's the average. Do you know what holds boobs in place?
You mentioned fascia earlier. I'm trying to think if there's anything underneath the fascia. Because for anyone who doesn't know what fascia is, it's essentially supporting tissues to keep structures together, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
so
if you eat chicken, if you take this peel the skin off chicken, there's always that really fine like tissue underneath. That's fascia. Fascia is like it's a lubricated tissue that helps all muscles move and glide nicely, as well as organs in the body, so that nothing gets tethered or gets stuck to each other. So that's what fascia is.
I imagine the correct answer isn't fascia. On the side note,
breasts are pretty much fat tissue, aren't they? Essentially, there's some obviously pectoral muscles at the back, but a lot of it is fatty tissue, isn't it? From what I understand.
Yeah.
But what holds it in place? That's good.
what
That's
holds it in
the
place? I don't want to say bra.
Is it just the, is it?
I'll come to that in a minute.
There we go.
Is it just the skin?
Yes. It is just skin. And often people are really surprised by that because, so when I was in school, and this is for the video now, but we were told, do this. I must improve my bust. Thinking that it was your pec muscles that inflated your breasts. It's not. Breasts are held in place by skin alone. And that's why over time our breasts change shape. And as we get older, they can hang a little bit lower. But they also impact our posture. So you've got this heavy bust. You've got a minimum of 2.5 kilos on your chest, which is a heavy weight to be carrying constantly. And over time, what can happen, I'm not saying it will happen, what can happen is that women start to stoop forward because gravity's just pulling those boobs down. So if you look at an older gentleman and an older lady, their postures will be very different. So women generally are a little bit more stooped, whereas men have a bit more of a flat back as they get older. They don't stoop quite so much.
And that's simply down to the weight of the breasts.
Yeah, amongst other things.
Factors,
but
sure,
I mean, to keep it all simple, yeah, mainly breast. But anyway, so it's just skin keeping everything in place, which means that our boobs move around as we walk, as we run, as we do exercise. Breasts can bounce as much as the distance of your forearm. So that's what, like 20 centimetres, maybe a bit more. So that's a massive bounce when you're running, say. And every time so physics now, every time your breast comes down to its I suppose lowest point, the velocity, because the speed at which it drops will increase the weight by up to 8 times its original weight.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, instead of having 2.5 kilos fall down, you've got 20.
Wow.
So that extra force. So do you remember how I said the pelvic floor is your shock absorber? Mm-hmm. Pelvic floor absorbs that shock. So every time you take a run, a step, 20 kilos are on that pelvic floor. So a nice way to, one of the easiest hacks to prevent leaks when you're running is get fitted for a bra, properly fitted, and wear a proper sports bra. Because 99% of the female population are not in the correct bra. And this is a bee in my bonnet, and I won't stamp my feet about it today. But yes, ladies, get properly measured. It improves your posture, it helps you breathe better, and it impacts your pelvic floor. Your pelvic floor isn't having to support that extra weight because the bra can do it for you. And that's just a nice, easy hack.
Yeah, I've heard the same things from running coaches that I know who say that 90% of the issues with women is just when they start, they feel really uncomfortable when they run. And a lot of it's down to their sports bras. It's just they're not supportive enough. Is there any brands out there that you think would be good to go to? Anything that you've tried? Do you run? Are you a runner?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You might not have any experience, mate, I guess.
I love Joe Wicks. I do HIIT. So
Okay, cool.
So brands bras themselves aren't really the issue. It's the measurements of them. So the average bra sold in the UK is 36C. But the average chest circumference of a woman, so what did I say? 36C, yeah.
Yep.
So the average chest circumference is 34 inches.
Okay.
So why are these women buying bras that are 2 inches too big already as a starting point?
Could it be a comfort thing?
Well, I'll go into the history of bras now. So when bras were first invented, the elastic band was not. So they would add a couple of inches so that your chest can expand. That's why they did that. We now have elastic bands, which means that your bra can expand and contract with every breath that you have. However, there are certain shops, M&S, who continuously add a couple of inches to your bra. So you're not supported at all because that band itself is sometimes 3 or even 4 inches too big for you.
Why do they do that? Is it a comfort thing? Is it because they want their bras to feel nice?
No, just they're not properly trained in bra fitting.
Yeah, maybe historical.
They've just got an app. I mean, I'm not poo-pooing M&S. The bras there are phenomenal. By all means, go there. Just don't get measured. There's better places to go. Always go local, I would say. There's some really good places in Sheffield. Perfect Fit is one, and The Woman in Me. They're both very, very good. Otherwise, if you are bigger chested, Boo Avenue at Meadowhall, or if you go to Leeds, Bravissimo, they're all very good places to get measured. Or there is also a website called booborbust.com, and it teaches you how to self-measure. And it's very, very good. And if you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, I really need to take my bra off, it's so uncomfortable, that's a surefire sign that it is not the right fit.
I didn't realise how many puns were included in bra stores. I'm very impressed by that. Just to lower the tone a little bit. That's amazing.
No, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. And I think for us to have that and not have to Google it ourselves is fantastic, because for you saying it like a female voice, essentially standing on the rooftops and saying, go to these places, try it out. We can't advocate for that enough. And I think I said in the promo for this, I put out something on my story yesterday. We didn't want to come on and mansplain it. And I don't know about you, Ryan, but Róisín's explaining this so much better than I ever could.
I've learned loads on it, so we're only about 20 minutes in. Yeah. Phenomenal. I think let's go on to the questions then. Have you got any more that you wanted to fire away?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for everyone who sent these in, by the way, because I've been stopped by people in the gym to say, "Can you ask Róisín this?" So it's been really really nice actually, and a lot of people just saying thank you for covering it, which it's our pleasure basically, and
Shows how much
Róisín's
of a needed topic this is to be talked about.
100%. One of them that we'll start right at the beginning of these questions. I'll try and chronologically ask these, but somebody asked, "What can I best do to prep my pelvis before trying for a baby?" So even before conception, is there anything someone can do to be really proactive? This person sounds like very type A, like we said, very proactive and organised. But
that was just a muscle. If you just lead a happy, healthy life, I mean, the easiest thing you could do is just walk. Walking is great because walking, it works the pelvic floor in every way that we've already talked about. So if you have a nice fast walk, your breathing becomes a bit more intense. So pelvic floor is having to react to that. Every time you put your foot down, there's the shock that's going up your leg. So it's having to act as the shock absorber. That's a mouthful. Every time, because you're walking, you're not shuffling, so you lift up your leg and put it down. Then you're having to work your balance as well. So that's my favourite thing to do. Now, I'm not poo-pooing Kegels. Well, I am, but there's, in the women's health sphere, Kegels, there's different types of practitioners now. Those who say Kegels or pelvic floor squeezes are the only way that's been proven in all the literature, and they just advocate for that. And then there's another school of thought of, nope, Kegels are rubbish. It's not functional, as in you can't walk along and squeeze as you're going. It's really hard. Let's not do it. Let's just focus on the whole body. I like to think I'm a little bit in the middle because Kegels are good, just like bicep curls are good for your bicep. It doesn't mean, just because you're isolating that muscle doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Kegels are really good, if nothing else, to make yourself aware of your pelvic floor. So many people don't know where it is, or forget about it. And if you neglect an area, or if you forget an area, often that's where problems can occur, because the body doesn't like to be forgotten about. So if you stop using your left arm, say, or I've cut my finger on my left hand, actually, so I can't use my index finger at the moment because it's really sore. And if I continued to neglect it and just did stuff without involving it, over time that finger would become quite weak. And a muscle that doesn't move is a muscle that gets grumpy and starts having tantrums and starts becoming sore. Think of muscles as toddlers. That's what I always say to my clients. So I've gone off track a little bit. So to answer your question, walking is great. Pelvic tilts are also really good as well. A pelvic tilt works the pelvic floor with its friends. So we can all do it now, gentlemen. If we just slump down into our chairs, slump the small of our back, and now sit up nice and tall again, and now slump back down, and nice and tall. That's tilting your pelvis. When you tilt your pelvis backwards, your pelvic floor naturally tenses with your abdominal muscles. When you go nice and tall and your pelvis tilts forwards, your pelvic floor relaxes. So that's a really nice functional way to get it squeezing. And then finally, I will say pelvic floor squeezes are a good one. But how do we do a good pelvic floor squeeze?
I have theories.
I think if I was going to do it, you'd probably put something between your legs maybe and clamp down a little bit potentially.
I'll shout out this book. I briefly mentioned it to you in a voice note, actually. When Amy was pregnant, I read a book called How to Grow a Baby and Push It Out. And
you read that?
I read that as well. It was locked down, mate. There was nothing to do. But I'm glad I did, genuinely. And it really changed my life in a way, because half of my clients are females. And one of the most graphic things I've ever read is, okay, what I want you to do now, and I'm sorry for any family members who are listening, is I just want you to sit there and I want you to pull your arsehole up towards basically your head. And I was like, oh, right, that's very graphic, but okay, That's an interesting thing
get
to read and to see.
Yeah.
Basically,
I mean, there's nicer ways to describe it.
Basically, yeah, but that bluntness really worked for me. I'm like, okay, right.
Fair enough.
I understand. Don't describe it to clients that way, but
Well,
still.
how I describe it is imagine you're in a lift full of people and you really need to fart.
Okay.
You clench that bum hole. Clench it. Don't want that fart coming out. And that's the back of your pelvic floor. And I'd always say start at the back because that's where the biggest muscle bulk is. Now you can then like zip it up, so to speak. So then for women, you bring your attention to your vagina. And excuse me for this, but it does get the best squeeze. Imagine you're in a bath full of eels and you don't want one going up. But everybody squeezes in the right place. For men, generally say testicles to spectacles or nuts to guts.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you can actually work different areas of your
can.
pelvic floor muscles depending on which bits and bobs you're focusing on, essentially.
Yeah. And working one works them all. And we always say start at the back because that's often where you can feel it the most because that's where the biggest muscle bulk is. And that will send a trigger to your to the front part of your pelvic floor to also contract as well, to also squeeze. To add to the squeeze, that's when you think of eels in the bath or trying to stop yourself mid-flow. But people can get quite caught up in that and kind of go, oh, I can't really feel it. I'm really worried. I'm not sure. Is it broken? If I can't feel it, don't overthink it. Clench that back passage. If you can't feel yourself squeeze, it's probably because it's a bit tense. In that case, don't focus on squeezing. Just focus on breathing. Really slow, deep breaths in and out through that nose. 3, 4, 5 belly breaths can be really beneficial, or just letting that stomach relax. We don't need to suck our stomachs in. Thank you, patriarchy. Sorry, I'm a strong feminist here. But just learning to work with your body rather than fight it. So to prepare for trying for a baby, it's the same advice as you would get from a nutritionist, eat healthy, stay active, from a nutritionist, eat healthy from a nutritionist, from a GP, keep moving. There's no right or wrong way. Often, if you're overly stressed, that can have an impact not on fertility, but it can make it harder to conceive because your body is thinking, well, if we're really stressed, there's obviously a woolly mammoth somewhere nearby trying to stomp all over us. It's not the right time to have a baby.
I think a lot of women's fears come from the fact that they don't want any pelvic floor issues, so they're thinking about prepping their body. And it's a scary thing for women, I bet, knowing that you're going to give birth and you never know what's going to happen, what's going to go back normal, what's not. It can be an uncertain time. And I don't begrudge that woman for asking the question about how do I prep, because everyone wants to recover really well from something like that. Yeah,
look, there's no such thing as a silly question when it comes to pelvic health, because there's so much assumed knowledge. You go see your doctor or your midwife and they're like, oh yeah, pelvic floor, blah, blah, blah. What is it?
Yeah.
I often get asked, do men have one? Yes. Yes, the only difference is that you have one hole less.
It's a muscle you don't see, isn't it? It's a bit like I get quite a lot of guys coming in and they'll have done a program for a year or so and it's been chest and arms, or chest and biceps. And I'm like, why are we obsessed with chest and biceps? What is it? Oh, it's because when we look in the mirror, that's what we can see. People don't see the back. They have no idea what's happening back there. So they ignore it. And I think it's the same with your pelvic floor. We just don't see this muscle. It's not something we're aware of. We're not in contact with it regularly or thinking about it regularly. I've thought about it more in the last 30 minutes than I have ever. I think I've been moving it up and down and fiddling with it a little bit as I've been sat here, more than I ever have. And I think it's something more people need to be aware of, especially females, for sure.
Yeah, well, men and women. But it's like with anything, you don't think about it. And that's great that you don't think about it because it's doing its job. It's doing a phenomenal job. We only ever think of anything when something goes wrong.
Speaking of going wrong, there's, I suppose the main reason why it's more of an issue for women than men is that when they do, especially new mums or, postnatal women, you've carried a child. Like I said, your internal organs have essentially shifted. There's so much more weight going through your pelvic floor. I think, Ryan, you had a question from someone about pelvic girdle pain with 30 weeks pregnant?
Yeah, so she's 30 weeks pregnant and she is suffering with a lot of pain around the kind of pelvic floor area.
Yeah.
She just wanted to know, is there anything she can do to alleviate that, essentially?
So yes, there is loads. It just very much depends on when she's getting pain. So I'm going to give a very woolly answer to this because there's lots of general stuff you can do. But if she's wanting something more specific, then I would advise that she either gets referred over to her women's health team at the hospital, or speak to her GP, or go seek out a women's health physio. Pelvic girdle pain happens to about 1 in every 5 women. We used to think, or research used to say, that it's because of a hormone called relaxin that's released when we get pregnant. That's not true. Because if that was true, then everybody would get pelvic girdle pain. Because the idea was that relaxin relaxes all your ligaments and all your tissues so that they can stretch ready for baby. But that's not true. What research is now showing is that pelvic girdle pain generally occurs to women who either have a very active lifestyle or a very sedentary lifestyle, so quite extremes. If you're in the middle, then you're generally okay. That I'm not saying that it's your fault that you're in pain. I'm just saying that those are the risk factors. But, there's outliers out all the time. And it very much depends on what's going on. What women generally do when they're in pain is they rest more, which is fine. Rest is as important as exercise. But if you exercise too much, you start to get sore. If you rest too much, those muscles get stiff and then can get sore too. So if she wants to carry on staying active, if she's still going to the gym, excellent. Just maybe tone it down a little bit, or just listen to her body. If it starts to get achy, have a rest. Pain is not a bad thing. Pain is actually really, really important. The human brain can only talk to us can say 4 things to us. I'm not talking about our inner voice or anything, but our brain can say, oh, we're thirsty, so we drink. Oh, we're hungry, so we'll eat. Oh, I'm tired, so we'll go to bed. But when it says, I'm in pain, we take a couple of paracetamol and crack on. When actually all the body's saying is, overdone it, please can we just stop right now? I don't like this. Now, I say that in today's society, it's really difficult to not just get on with life. So
it's amazing how effective 2 paracetamol and a Monster is, though.
We need to talk.
It's solves a lot of my issues.
The mention of Monster, I was just like, oh, that's what it did for me.
Oh my days, that rots your insides. What? It's luminous. Don't drink anything that's luminous.
I think people think it's a lot worse than it is. So maybe like another topic for the podcast.
A Monster-related episode.
Monster. We should do one all on energy drinks, just to alleviate that. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Birthing balls. Or just a gym ball. Top tip, you don't need to get a birthing ball. They cost 3 times as much. Just get a gym ball. Make sure it's anti-burst, but they do exactly the same thing on the tin. But they're cheaper because they don't have the word birth in them. Sitting on those can really help pelvic floor pain or pelvic girdle pain, because it forces all of those muscles to work equally as part of a team. So then they're all responsible. They're all working equally. Pelvic girdle pain is often because one muscle is working too hard and it's starting to grumble because it's above its pay grade. It's not bothered anymore. So sitting on a birthing ball can really help. Meditation can really help as well. So going back to what you guys were saying, in the lead up to giving birth, it is quite anxiety inducing. It is really scary, especially if it's your first. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what it's going to be like. You hear all these horror stories, so you can get quite anxious, quite tense, going back to that tension. So meditation can really help, or going on all fours and going into child pose, or rocking back and forth on all fours as well, can just really help just soften everything whilst breathing. Breathing is key, and I can get into a lot of science about how the breath can really help your nervous system, that can then help reduce pain. But I think that might be for another day. Swimming is also a really nice one, or not even swimming, just getting into a pool, because all of a sudden that the water supports bump, takes away all that pressure, and you can just sit there for a bit and go, oh, this is nice, the pain's gone or is reduced.
Yoga, is that something you would entertain the idea of?
Yeah, if they enjoy, if they like it. I am a big believer that as a physio, it is my job to support you in whatever you choose to do. I do not agree with that you can't do that. Who am I to say you cannot exercise, you cannot do that exercise? I can advise, I can give you information about it, and then at the end of the day, you choose. If you want to run right up to the end of your pregnancy, I will not say no. I will say, think about this, think about that, and I give you some advice to help you do what you want to do.
I'm really happy we're on the same page. I think we're probably the same mindset as coaches, where we think it's all within someone's tolerance, really. Bodies are so different and so varying that you can't tell a woman who's, used to lifting, used to training, used to running, that all of a sudden, because she's pregnant, she now can't do those things. Yeah. It's just being sensible with it and maybe getting some good advice and listening to your body.
Yeah.
There was a really good, strong woman who had a baby recently. There's two. It was actually Paul Smith's wife. Yes. She was quite vocal online about still training with considerable weight, shall we say, while she was pregnant. And she got a hell of a lot of pushback online. Loads of people saying it's dangerous, you're going to hurt your baby, there'll be future complications, you need to stop what you're doing. And she was just sick of it. She basically spoke out and released these videos just saying, no one knows my body better than me. I'm going to do what I feels right, and I'm going to do it in a safe possible way for me and my child. But no one's as qualified to give me information as myself and my doctor. Yeah. All these comments online were just people who don't train themselves, don't know the outcomes, just see a big scary weight being lifted by a pregnant lady and make massive assumptions.
Yeah, and it just angers me. Women are forever told you can't do that. Can't do that. And going back to what you said right at the beginning of the podcast, all of a sudden your world becomes really small. I love running. Oh, but you can't run because you're pregnant. Oh, well, what can I do instead? Swimming? I don't like swimming. Well, I'll just stay in. I'll go walking instead. Oh, I'll go for a walk. It's starting to get sore. I'm starting to get pelvic girdle pain now. Oh, well, stop walking and just do a couple of squats here and there. Just your world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And then that fear takes over. And it's more challenging to expand your world than it is to make it small. And this is worst case scenario, but I used to work, back when I first started as a physio, in the community. So I used to go to people's homes and people who couldn't leave their house for whatever reason. And I'd often see a lot of women who'd had lots of falls. So these are ladies in their 80s who would get up and fall over because their balance was really poor. And if you rewind, what happened is they'd started leaking at some point in their lives, and they were really embarrassed about it, and they didn't want to, so they'd wear all the pads, but every time they stood up, they'd leak, so they didn't want to stand up very much for fear of smelling, so they'd sit. They'd sit and sit and sit and sit until they were absolutely desperate to go to the toilet, so then they get up and they rush and they fall. So because they don't have the leg strength anymore because they say sat all the time. So, I know that's worst case scenario. You don't want to leak, so you stay sitting, and then you sit for so long that your leg strength goes, and then when you do stand up, you fall over. But, I
guarantee that's, in the elderly years, that's easier to do because you probably, you're retired, you don't move as much.
You'd be really surprised. This happens a lot. So going back to this strong woman, let's say she was like, oh no, I can't lift anymore, but I love it. So then you get depressed. Well, again, worst case, I'm not saying that you will become depressed, but then you're like, oh, well, I'll do something else, but I don't really like that exercise, so I'm not really going to do that exercise. Oh, well, I've got a baby now, so I'll just look after the baby. Oh, I'm leaking all the time. Oh, well, I can't do anything else now because it'll just make it worse. Spiral, spiral, spiral. This happens all the time. If we go back to 40 to 60% of the female population will leak at some point in their lives.
Think about women who work in desk jobs as well, in offices across the city, the country, the world. And they're just worried about, I might leak in the office, and there's nothing more embarrassing around other females and males. I can see why they go, I'm just going to stay at my office, at a desk, I'm not going to move, and I'm only going to get at worst case scenarios. I can see how it spirals, definitely.
Yeah.
An observation of mine's very much been societally speaking. Society?
Society.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. where we've probably got a lot to answer for, where we've almost shamed women into thinking you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So coming back to a word you said about empowerment, and I never really understood what that meant. Like, what does empowerment mean for you in your work and what you do?
Empowerment for me means you have a choice. You can choose to do something. If you're told it's normal, then all of a sudden that power is taken away from you, that choice is taken away from you, because you think, I can't, well, I'm just going to leave, I'll just stay at my desk, I have to put 10 ladies on. But if I give you the knowledge, well, not me giving you the knowledge, but if you have the knowledge is power. You can choose what you want to do. That power lifter knows her body. She's empowered to carry on doing what she wants to do. My clients who come and see me, who go for a run and they leak, we've just spoken about bras today. That lady might go out and go, oh, do you know what, that might help. I'll go get measured properly, or I'll measure myself, because now I know that M&S is rubbish.
It's very reminiscent for when my wife was pregnant, and her motto was very much my pregnancy, my choice.
Yes.
And I was all for it. She had a lot of time to research and get the knowledge, and she still tries to not advise her clients. She's not a trainer. She's a nail tech. She's a beauty therapist, but she sits across from so many people, and she said they just accept it as normal.
Yep.
And apart from the obvious that you've mentioned about maybe why it is normalised, do you think it is maybe people just accepting that it's the tenor lady ads?
I mean, it's healthcare misogynistic. I can't speak. It's healthcare misogynistic. That's it. Oh, I can't even speak today. But I mean, look.
Normally it's me who's bad actually.
It's just healthcare misogyny.
It's that monster I'm selling you, the monster.
Must need a monster.
I've got some downstairs if you want.
But yeah, it's just misogyny. Healthcare, it really grinds my gears.
I bet in what you do, you see it more than anything, because you mentioned something that I thought was poignant in this regard with your course, and when you said it was only, an hour on the pelvic floor stuff, and males just switched off because they just don't want to know. I can see that as well. Like, it doesn't affect us. We're not really down for understanding it. We'll leave other female doctors to get that and work with those people who have those issues.
Sorry, you can't see me, or you can't hear me roll my eyes. That is. But okay, how many women do you treat?
I treat a lot. And,
exactly. So why are you? I'm not saying you. This is my anger directed at you now. But all those boys in my class, and I'm going to call them boys because that is wrong. How many? Over half the population is female. So why all of a sudden you're like, I don't have a pelvic floor. You do. I don't care. Yeah, but what about all those people, all those patients you're going to treat?
I get asked all the time. Women who have had babies and they come to training will always, it's 99% of the time we'll discuss the pelvic floor and what's going on, and they'll recommend, or they'll ask for exercises and recommendations. But I feel like I needed this chat like 5 years ago, when I started working with women maybe a bit more on a serious basis around pelvic floor stuff, and being able to help pregnant women and during pregnancy, but obviously after pregnancy and the recovery as well.
I remember having a bit of a light bulb moment where I like to do a bit of a yearly review, so I zoomed out a little bit. I thought, right, what have I talked a lot about with my clients? And two things popped up: poo and periods. Yep. And I'm like, I probably need to understand this a little bit better. And then it became leakages. And the next year that I was in PT, and I'm like, wow, I really need to know this stuff, because like you said, half the people who we train are females, and especially as you get older as a PT, and you start attracting maybe a certain type of demographic, other mums and dads and stuff, and you realise I need to understand this even more. So I think having you on in particular, just to break a few myths, is brilliant. Yeah. Is there anything you wish people would ask you more when it comes to pelvic health? Or
that's a good question.
We try.
That's a really good question. What do I wish people would ask me? I think I just wish it was more common knowledge about the pelvic floor, and not just, it's broken. It's not broken. It never is broken. And it's more the language used around it. A lot of my clients come and see me, and they've seen, often GPs, who are just like, pelvic floor is non-existent. What's that done to that woman's confidence now? She just thinks she's broken, and then she won't do anything. Again, worst case scenario. There is always help out there, and if you're both PTs, but if you guys take nothing away from this, but from this chat, but this is that the pelvic floor is a muscle. Warm it up and cool it down. Warming it up, so anything hip based, so hip openers, lunges, deep lunges to stretch it out. That's or to warm it up, or high knee marching. And then to cool it down, child pose, happy baby pose, cobra pose. Those are all really nice ways. Or just sitting cross-legged, that can help stretch it out. Exercises that really challenge the pelvic floor is a squat. That has been proven to put the most pressure on the pelvic floor. And I'm not saying that as in don't do squats. Do them. We squat every day when we sit down. And when we stand up, that's a squat. So it's a really functional exercise. If somebody is leaking in that squat, then don't go down as low. Just, with any exercise, progress them. That's sort of, So
yeah, no, makes sense. I feel like I'm going to go back and make some notes on that, because I definitely think a warm up and a cool down for ladies who have got some issues down there is a great idea. Actually, something I probably didn't really think about too much. We would maybe do, and maybe have them do exercises away from sessions. But I think warming that area up is a great shout, actually.
Yeah, but don't overthink it. Just high marching, if nothing else, high marching is great.
And to confirm, like someone who's got kids in their 20s and 30s, like if their child is now an adult, if they're 20 years old, you're still postnatal.
Yeah.
If you're a mum, you're still postnatal, and it's important to give it that due care and attention. I suppose coming back to one of the questions that we got, obviously I felt we've gone on a bit of a journey there about like conception, whilst they are actually pregnant, post-birth. We got a question from someone about advice for pain during sex post childbirth. She just said this was like, it was never the case before she had a little girl.
Yeah.
I appreciate this might be a little bit of a uncomfortable one to discuss, or I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
So pain during sex is called vaginismus or dyspareunia, and it's really common and nobody talks about it. There's so much shame around it, and women will put up with a lot of pain in order to or just avoid sex, and you're not alone. Please take this message, you are not alone. It's quite heartbreaking to not be able to just have a part of your life taken away from you. And sex is so important in relationships. But again, it's not where there's no hope, there's no it's understanding why that might have come about. So often it's because the tissues around there have tensed up. Because because of trauma during childbirth, because of the association or loss of association with the pelvic floor. So going back to what I said about if you don't use something, it can get sore. Well, that can often happen post labour, because women are like, oh my days, what? I don't want to think about that anymore. So there are lots of different treatments out there for it. You might have heard of dilators, which is like a set of dildos, I suppose, for want of a better word, in different sizes that you use to stretch out your vagina and the tissues around there. That's not for everybody, but some women really like that. There is counselling, sexual counselling, to understand why those tissues are gone tense, because the biggest sexual organ in the body is the brain. So if that brain has got an association with pain during sex, then that will be continuously what's the word?
Damaging.
Not damaging. No, I don't like using negative words like that, but it's just a vicious circle. That's all it is. You think, oh, sex is going to be painful.
Just an association thing.
That's it, association. vaginal massage can be really helpful as well, just massaging those tissues. You know, this lady, did she have an episiotomy? So scars around the post after you've given birth. So an episiotomy is when your vagina is cut to prevent tearing. But sometimes that scar can get quite tight. So massaging it, so massaging the vagina is just a question of getting a little bit of lube on your fingers and just gently rubbing it. Or is it painful because the vagina's a bit dry? Because of all the hormones going on postnatally, the vagina can become quite dry as well. So using plenty of lubricant as well can help, or different positions as well. And just talking, communication is the biggest thing, talking to your partner. If they don't know that you're in pain, then then they won't know to not necessarily take more care. Well, yes, take more care, but they won't know that certain positions are hard or that you're not enjoying it. You know, be open and honest about it as well.
I can see why this is like, it could be a really damaging thing to someone's relationship, this, because it's, you know, it's, we say it's essential. I think it is like an essential part of every relationship, isn't it? It's that connection with two people. But if there's one person not enjoying it, and maybe they are vocalising it, maybe they are saying, I don't like this. Sometimes as a bloke, you might go, oh, maybe it's me. Maybe you look internally as well and go, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe she doesn't want to, you know, do it, or I don't know. I would look more internally if it was like that was the case. Yeah,
but then all of these things go unsaid then, because then you're not talking to your partner going, oh, is it me? So then, again, worst case, isn't it? But it's communication is key with vaginismus, and it's just about creating a safe space in the bedroom and listening to each other's needs and wants, and if it hurts, just stopping, finding something else. Sex doesn't have to be penetrative as well. I'm not saying don't do penetration. If that's what you want to work towards, go speak to your GP, go be referred to Women's Health, or seek a women's health physio or a psychosexual counsellor as well.
I think it's very important to stress that you could have just saved some relationships there. You could have just saved someone's, not only relationship with the partner, but with himself, with the association. And again, it's the knowledge. I can't stress that enough. Just understanding that, like you said, you're not broken. There's different ways that you can go about this as well. It's not just, no, you need to do this, or just get on with it.
Yeah.
There's things you can do. Yeah. And I think if there's a key word of today, is empowerment. Yes. In my eyes, it very much is. And it's a good job you're here, Róisín. So I don't know how far me and Ryan would have got through that conversation.
I wouldn't want that necklace, that's for sure.
There's still time.
Why?
Let's get it, folks. I might be interested now. Why
Tatty Divine actually was a present, but I'm pretty sure it's Tatty Divine.
Tatty Divine. If they do a cock one, I might get a cock one.
Do you know what? I've got one which is it's a fuck uterus, and basically it's a uterus with two middle fingers. I love that one.
That's such amazing wordplay
like
as
we
well.
get you back on when you sold that one.
That one's got I'll wear that one if I come back. Yes.
Walter's doing the rounds under the table as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Wanting everyone's attention.
Just out of curiosity as well for me, what would you say is the biggest demographic of women who you work with? Is there any specific, I want to say popular things, but that's probably the wrong word. Any commonalities that you see? Is it prenatal? Is it postnatal? Is it?
I generally see women postnatal. Mm-hmm. So the women who seek me out are generally 35 plus. Mm-hmm. They've had some children. And they leak, or they have a prolapse, or they have or pain during sex. Those are the main three clients that I get. That's not to say that I won't see postnatal ladies, or antenatal women. It's just, I suppose, my passion is leaks. I am known as the leaks lady amongst my friends because I talk about it all the time. But that's who generally come and see me. But I think if you're looking for a women's health physio, if you're listening to this and anything's resonating, you think, yes, I know I can do something about it. I think what's the most important thing is if you decide to go private, great. NHS, great. It's just getting that rapport. And if you go see a physio and you think, I don't feel listened to or I don't feel heard, that's okay. You don't feel like you have to stick with them. Go look for somebody else. And if you go to the GP to get referred over to a women's health physio in the NHS and you feel dismissed, oh my days. I mean, I could just get on my little high horse about this. Go seek a second opinion. Or what actually is better is going in armed with your symptoms. And so writing it all down so you don't forget anything. Going with somebody as well means that you're less likely to be dismissed by that healthcare professional as well, because there's a third party there who's observing everything. And be very clear. Just say, I am doing my Kegels. However, I'm still struggling with this and I would like further support. I'd like to be referred over to a women's health physiotherapist or to the gynecological team as well.
Anecdotally, and this is a very selfish thing for me to say, but when I was going through one of my diagnoses of rheumatoid arthritis, I got countless opinions because there were times where I felt fobbed off and I didn't like it. So again, I went in armed, I took other people with me. I lost count of the number of opinions that I got, and I wasn't rude about it. I was just like, I'm not very happy with what you've just said there. I'd like to speak to somebody else. Can I get referred to this? And it's knowing that, again, you have the choice.
Yeah.
It's not just this person with a stethoscope and a lab jacket on. They're in control of your life.
Yeah.
I'm the worst person for that. Amy won't let me take Harlow to the doctors because she thinks I'm a pushover.
Really?
Yeah. If I go up there and the doctor goes, she's fine, I go, oh, say okay, Sam. I'll take it back. Don't worry, I'll tell Mrs. I'm going home. I'm really not looking forward to this conversation. But Amy, my mum, won't let me take Harlow to the doctors anymore. Because you have got to push sometimes. You have got to find, number one, the person that you have a rapport with, and someone that who just understands your situation. And not everyone's right, not everyone's correct. No one knows your body as well as you do. And the anecdote you mentioned there with your rheumatoid arthritis, because I remember you mentioned actually that you weren't happy and you really persevered with it, and you almost got them to admit that, like, this is what I've got, and you kind of knew in your own mind that's what you had. I think you'd almost maybe self-diagnose. You just needed someone to give you that clarification on it.
It's the stubbornness, because I knew it wasn't normal what I was feeling, and I'm sure a lot of postnatal women are going to resonate with that as well, that it probably isn't. When you realise it's not normal, you go, oh, actually, I'm going to brush up on this, and I'm going to figure that out. I suppose to turn the tables a little bit, Róisín, have you got any questions for me and Ryan? Anything that you want us to know or elaborate on? Obviously, you're in the room with two, dare I say, highly experienced coaches, whether it's stuff that we experience with our clients. Is there anything you'd like us to elaborate on?
Oh, I've not really thought of that.
It's fine. Fully on the spot, by the way.
Yeah, really on the spot. I suppose what you said yourself that you take a step back every year and you look at what's coming about, so like postnatally or leaks and stuff. What have you done to then change your training to better respond to those needs?
For me, it's probably creating an environment for them to speak about it, and not being like, oh, just because I'm a male, you don't have to not speak to me about that. And it's elaborating on the fact that this is part of your body, this is part of your stress response, and I'm probably not scared about asking those sort of questions in a very scientifically worded way, not just like, being a bit too blunt with it, but almost giving them the environment where they can speak to me about stuff. And I get to the point now where women will come in, they'll say like, oh, how are you feeling today? And it's like, crap, I've come on yesterday. I feel terrible. And I just think, what an amazing thing to just come in and tell your PT. That's so cool. Yeah.
Because so many, I don't know, it can be quite embarrassed. A lot of women are still embarrassed about telling men, oh, I'm on my period. Oh, yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why women would sometimes prefer to be coached by other women. And I have people fill out the application form and say, do you have any women coaches there? And I sometimes probe a little bit deeper, and they never really truly open up and say, like, it's because I want to talk to them about kind of the female things that go on. But the amount of conversations we have with our clients that are very personal, very in-depth things, and some people more open than others with things like that. But it's just something we have to talk about because it's such a big factor of their program, their progress, their life, their training, their nutrition, how their body operates. We need to talk about, how bad is it someone's, how good is it someone's, how does it affect you in terms of your cravings, and what do you crave? Is there any way we can change things those weeks and months? How does it affect you from a mental point of view? Is stepping on the scales going to be the worst thing in the world because you're going to have the worst month after that because you saw that weight go up and it's going to spiral and you're going to feel like a piece of shit and you're going to feel like everything's going out the window, when actually it was just you retaining water for a week? There's so many things that we need to discuss with women, but I think some women don't appreciate that men would understand that.
But I think also remember that the majority of men, going back to, like, I know I keep banging on about it, but that my class full of guys who kind of went, whoop, I'm checking out for that 1 hour. You two, I would honestly say, are the exceptions. I've met a lot of PTs who are just like, oh, what? I don't know. So, and I'm not poo-pooing men PTs. I know there's plenty. We're all here to learn. We're all here to leave the world a better place. And I think just being aware that women's bodies are really different. Men go through a daily cycle with their hormones. Women go through a monthly cycle. So everything that I'm not saying everything that women go through, you guys go through in a day, but it's just very different.
Talk me through that. What's our daily cycle? I've
got thoughts on that.
Mine's getting up the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
Well, your highest amount of testosterone, for instance, is in the morning.
Is it really?
Which is why you often wake up and are very horny.
The old morning glory. At least it's all right.
And then just over the course of the day, then that testosterone level changes throughout the day. So with women, we have a monthly cycle of our estrogen and our testosterone and our can't remember the other hormone. Progesterone. That's it. They all change throughout the month. Do you want to know a top fact? You know how I like this because I've been told this in the past myself when I've been on my period and men have said, "Oh, you're crazy because you're on your period." When women are on their period, that's when we have the highest levels of testosterone in our body.
Well,
so if we're being crazy, we're being more masculine, basically, and not necessarily knowing our worth, but because confidence, but probably advocating a bit more for ourselves because we're just fucked off.
Yeah. The way I got explained was, and I think this is correct, testosterone and estrogen, the male and female hormones, it's like a pie chart. So when one increases, the other one will naturally increase as a result. Is that why during that kind of few days of the month where women's testosterone is high, is it because estrogen's also
No, estrogen's low during period.
Is it really?
It's low.
I didn't know that.
It's really fascinating for me. Like, I watched an amazing video from this YouTube channel called After School, who have been very kind to share me on their page a couple of times, which has been amazing. And then, like, they're huge. And they've shared like Joe Rogan stuff, and Elon Musk's been on there and stuff. It's been wild. So to be shared to their story is quite nice.
Wow.
Who's that?
After School. It's basically an animated, similar to what like Luke Horton does, where there's like animated images, but then there's like voiceovers over the top. And they did a recent women's health one about understanding the monthly cycle. And I thought, I'm going to give this a listen and a watch and see what it says. And then, do you want to know, I think it's the top 3 things that affect men's testosterone in a day. This blew my mind.
Go on.
I say in a day, like the top things that spike it. So it was obviously women, anything sexual, that's fair. Another one was weapons.
Weapons.
Which was interesting. Yeah, like guns.
So then is it related to stress then?
Yeah, well.
Or excitement?
Stress and excitement, basically, which fascinated me.
Number 3, what's number 3?
I can't remember. As I was speaking there, I thought, please remember, Brad. But I've got 2 there.
Guns and guns. Guns and women, I mean, you just...
Do you remember Dan Bilzerian back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. He was a testosterone machine.
Wow.
That's what he was trying to do, entice. But no, I honestly think that it's an amazing thing to understand.
Yeah.
In terms of any other things that you want to discuss whilst we've got you on the soapbox, anything else that you want to shout out or spread some awareness about?
I'm
pretty sure we'll finish recording.
We've been over a lot, to be fair. It was only thing that there was one question from a bloke that you asked, I think, before the podcast, but I think it's probably worth mentioning on the podcast.
Yeah, so I appreciate. I always like to brief people if we have like pre questions. I always like to brief said expert just in case it's out of their remit, and you briefly covered it before, and I think you did a great job of it. If we're right to touch on that again, does pelvic floor affect men as you get older in regards to bladder and sexual performance as well?
So I'm not a male pelvic health specialist. There are male pelvic health specialists out there. So do talk to your GP if you're concerned with anything. What I would say about getting older and your bladder, I'm going to make an assumption here that when this gentleman is talking about bladder concerns is maybe having to wake up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet multiple times, or all of a sudden having a surprise wee, as in like, oh, I really need to go. Where does that come from? That's not a pelvic floor problem per se. It's more of a bladder problem. So the bladder is think of it as a muscular balloon, which slowly fills up over the course of, not the course of the day, over the course of a few hours with urine. So every minute, our bladders are about 1 millimetre of urine is being dripped into our bladder every minute. So it's constantly filling. And as it fills, it has a constant dialogue with our brain. Subconsciously, we don't know, we're not aware of this going on. I need to rewind. Basically, our bladders can hold, on average, the max, a pint, about 600 mils.
Wow.
Some bladders can hold more, some bladders a little bit less. Okay. And as it's filling by
Partner
one...
wants to test that now.
Well, your biggest wee will always be in the morning because you've gone however long you've slept overnight. So it's constantly filling by 1 millimetre every minute or so. And when it reaches about 150 mils, generally there'll be a little signal going to your brain from the bladder going, yo, just to let you know, I'm filling up. I'll probably need to go soon. And the brain's like, yeah, well, I'm in the middle of this podcast. I can't go. And it will carry on filling. And then it'll hit about 200 mil, maybe 250, depending on the person. And again, saying, oh, I'm starting to get quite full now. We really need to start thinking about going to the toilet. And again, you might be like, well, I'm in the middle of a jog. I can't go right now. And then finally, you'll get a third signal, roughly about 300 mils, 250 to 350 mils. And at this point, the bladder will be like, no, I am full. We need to go. So you'll be like, right, okay, I need to go to the toilet now. And it won't be like a strong, like bursting urge. It's oh no, I need to go now. But you still have control to kind of go, wow, I'm in the middle of playing with my kids and it's a key moment. I'll go in a bit. And then that will slowly build and you'll be bursting towards the end. What can happen is the bladder starts to get a bit sensitive, and I'll get into why in a minute, where those three signals are still happening, but they're happening at much smaller volumes. And so at 150 mil or less, your bladder's going, I need to go now, please, can we go? Or this surprise need for a wee, urgent need to go comes on. So that's a muscle, that's the bladder telling the brain, not a pelvic floor problem. So why does it start to get a bit more sensitive? Well, oftentimes it's because we've created bad habits of going to the toilet just in case. And I'm sure when we were little, when we were going out, our parents would say, right, we're going on a long drive. Let's go to the toilet. Oh, I don't need to go. Well, go just in case.
Have a try.
Have a try. I'm sure you tell this to your kids.
Every time we leave the house.
It's the most northern thing I've ever heard.
Have a try.
And then halfway down the road, I need to go. Yeah. Well, you should have had a try then.
But at the same time, they're listening to the body. They don't need to go then. Mm-hmm. And then, there is an argument of, well, do they need to go because you put that thought in their head? But that's another story. But so we often go a little bit more frequently. And this happened a lot to women as well, where you start to then worry. You might think, oh, well, we've got a long drive. I might not be able to go. I'll go to the toilet. Or you're out for a walk and you think, oh, there won't be any toilets nearby. I should go now. But the more you go to the toilet, the more you'll go to the toilet. And then you'll start to get triggers as well. So full disclosure, I used to always have a wee in the shower. come at me. I don't care. But then it meant that every time I saw a shower, I would have a surprise wee. I'd be like, oh my days, I'm bursting for one. And it was just because it was a habit that I'd formed.
That your mind knew that as soon as it started hearing the shower and you felt
Just
it on
see
you,
it,
your body just goes, oh, I need a wee.
Well, it might have started there, but like it got to the point where I'd walk into the bathroom, see the shower, and I'd need to go. Wow. But some people get that, like they put their key in the front door and they think, oh, I need to go. They see a toilet, they need to go. Cold water, they need to go. Cold day outside, I need to go. So to stop that, the easiest thing is to stop going just in case. But I make that sound really easy, and that can be really difficult. A happy, healthy bladder will go to the toilet every 3 to 4 hours. So if you're going every 2 hours or every hour, that is not a happy bladder. And also, what people end up doing is they stop drinking quite so much because they think, oh, I'll just have to go to the toilet. That bladder's always filling. But instead of filling with nice dilute urine, it's filling with quite concentrated stuff. And concentrated wee irritates the bladder, so you'll want to go more. And then there's the risk of infections, etc. So keep hydrated is key. So drinking at least 2 litres of fluid a day. 2 litres of water, ideally, a day, can really help. Try just by cutting out one, just in case wee. If you get a strong surprise wee urge coming on, what a lot of people do is then they rush to the toilet and then they often leak. Instead, clench your pelvic floor. So clench your back passage, squeeze those eels away, cross your legs if needs be, and wait. And it will feel like an eternity, this bursting sensation to go to the toilet. But in reality, it's 2, maybe 3 seconds. What squeezing your pelvic floor does sends a signal to your bladder and then your brain saying, no, we're not ready to go to the toilet yet. Back off, you big bladder bully. So the bladder will calm down. Great, you think. But what is left is often that little, but maybe I should go to the toilet if I've had that bursting. And where your brain thinks, your body follows. So if your brain's thinking, oh, maybe I should go to the toilet, then that urge will come back. Best way is to distract the brain. The best way to distract the brain, and it sounds mad, walk backwards 3 or 4 steps.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does this work for hunger as well?
You may have just unlocked the code.
There's some clients that might benefit from this.
Yeah, but walking backwards, because the brain all of a sudden kind of goes, look, much like you two both kind of went, what? Yeah. It goes, what? Why are we walking? I thought we were going to walk forwards. I thought we were going to go to the toilet. Why are we walking backwards? And he gets so befuddled, forgets.
It's interesting. We've all had that, I think, where I've had been bursting for a wee. Something comes up, I can't go there and then, or I'm not in a position to go. And then 20 minutes goes by and you're like, I needed a wee really badly, 20 minutes ago, and now I'm not that bothered.
But your brain's distracted, so it's not thinking about it. So it's not listening to the bladder anymore.
Do you know what's really strange that you've just said that? I've just really analysed what I do in a day, and whenever I do sessions, if my mind wanders away from the session, I'll find myself walking backwards. Which is, I don't know why that's only just dawned on me. Yeah, so I feel like Ryan's going to be judging me now. Next time he sees me at gym, he's like, oh, his mind's wandered. That's walking backwards downstairs.
He's not that client. he's walking backwards. He don't give a shit about them.
What are your clients going to think now?
I mean, they'll be calling me out for it, definitely.
Focus, Brad. Come
They'll
on,
be like, walking backwards, are we?
Back in the room, Brad, come on.
Yeah, come on.
Walk forwards for you then.
There you go then. I honestly think that's amazing. That's
some
amazing.
great insights there into bladder, the control, and how it all works.
Look, I make it sound really easy. It takes time, and there will be days where you struggle, and there will be days where you think, "Yeah, I'm winning at life." But it does come. Just stick at it.
The question mentioned something about sex, though, didn't it, as well? Like it was something about sexual performance.
Yeah, I think that was sort of bolted on there, if you like, just in case it is semi-related from a pelvic floor aspect.
So from a penis point of view, an erection doesn't have very much to do with your pelvic floor. An orgasm does, but an erection itself doesn't. That's
girls and guns we've established.
But if he is concerned, if he does have questions, I would ask him to go see his GP. And I just realised earlier on we were kind of bashing GPs a little bit. Look, GPs are brilliant. They know a lot of things. and they have a lot of things that they have to go through in their heads as well. They are overworked and very stressed. So I'm not here to bash GPs. They are doing a phenomenal job with the resources that they have. So yeah.
I feel like the name is literally on the tin, the general practitioner. Like they seem to know a bit about a lot. Whereas if you want specialist care, I always say GPs are amazing signposters.
They are.
And I love that about GPs. I'd struggle to think where we'd be without them.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, the first port of call if this gentleman has any problems or concerns is to seek out a male pelvic health physio or speak to their GP or do both.
Or send him Dan Bilzerian's Instagram.
Yeah, just be like, there you go. That'll sort you out. Have you got any final questions for Róisín, Ryan?
No, we've literally had a few other things, but we've covered them in one way or another. So, yeah, awesome. Brilliant.
Amazing. In terms of signing off today, I really hope that you're flooded with inquiries after this. Pardon the pun about leakages.
I might use that there.
Yeah, there you go. I want to be flooded with inquiries. Where would people find you? Where can you signpost them to get some resources or to get in contact with you?
So a really good place to get information from is pogp.co.uk. POGP is the governing body for pelvic, obstetric and gynae physios. And on there's also a list of physiotherapists who specialise in women's or pelvic health, I should say. If you want to measure your breasts, booborbust.com is a really good website that gives you loads of information about breast care, about bras, including nursing bras and antenatal and postnatal bras.
I didn't know there were so many.
So many. Well, if you're breastfeeding, you want to unclip so you can get your...
That's a great idea. Yeah. A good point.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to say something rude then. I'll refrain.
If you would like to see me, then you can find me at thrive-physiotherapy.co.uk, or I'm also on Instagram as well at _leaks_lady, the leaks lady.
The leaks lady, I like that.
The leaks lady. Or, email me. If you have any questions, I will always get back to anybody who asks me a question. I also do a pelvic strength exercise class in Sheffield, which is just, I created it because there's more than Kegels in life, really. And I'm a big, if you enjoy exercise, you'll do exercise more. So it's interval training style class where we get the pelvic floor moving through full body exercises. And I give you hints and tips of what you can do with everyday life just to help maintain pelvic health and pelvic strength. I do that every Thursday at 11 o'clock at Tribe on Ecclesall Road. And I'm also starting to do it in Kelham Island at 9:30 on a Friday, starting in April as well. So yes, if you...
That's awesome. The woman who asked me the question, she might really be up for that. But she's 30 weeks pregnant. Is that something she could attend at that kind of level, or is that a bit too
so it's
late?
open to all. So my eldest lady there is in her 70s, and my youngest is 28.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and
in terms of weeks, she's 30 weeks pregnant though. So in terms of pregnancy, she's fine to kind of come down if she feels.
what did we talk about right at the beginning of this?
True. Yeah. Good point. No, absolutely right. Yeah.
So she's fine to come, and it's just listen to her own body, and we can always change exercises for her if she wants, or just modify them a little bit. It's not. It's a slow exercise class in that it's all about strength training, body strength exercises. There's a little bit of aerobics in there, and we can always push you to do some jumps if you want, if you feel ready for jumping. But it's just about putting that pelvic floor and the rest of the body under tension to build muscle mass.
Awesome.
So yeah, but if you want to see me one-to-one, www.thrive-physiotherapy.co.uk, or you can Google my name. There's only one Róisín O'Bentley in the world. So.
Is there really?
Oh, wow. There you go. That's what you want.
Yeah, there's definitely more than one Ryan Doe.
Honestly, Róisín, I'm really impressed. I hope everyone gets some phenomenal value out of this one. And just to stress as well, like, you've recommended a lot of free and low-cost resources as well, which I just think is phenomenal. So thank you so much for bringing that to the table.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you for joining us on Dad's podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
See you soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That was really good.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.